Fire is a fascinating force that carries within it both the power to soothe and the power to destroy. What do we really know about this force that is with us and under our control in almost every aspect of our lives today? But in this video I'm going to talk about the fire that Prometheus gave to mankind and what its invention means for man. Have a good time. When we look at mythological origins, we can see that humans have had problems with the gods from the very beginning. In most mythologies, the gods saw humans as insignificant and worthless. But some gods became interested in the human race. Some gods even became friends with humans. Prometheus was one of them. The first humans created by the gods lived happily together, but their children were not so grateful or content. Sometimes the children even argued with the gods, let alone arguing among themselves. Zeus was very disappointed in mankind. He decided not to give anything to mankind and denied them fire, which would have been an extremely important power for mankind. Prometheus felt sorry for his human friends. Fire was important for many things: heat, cooking, and 100 other things. Prometheus had a brother, Epimetheus, who was a titan like him. Prometheus's name means foresight. Epimetheus means the one who learns later, the one who sees later. So one represented foresight and the other the opposite. According to some traditions about the creation of humanity, Prometheus made the first man from clay, while others say that the gods created all living things on earth, and Epimetheus and Prometheus were given the task of equipping them with gifts so that they could survive and thrive. Epimetheus generously distributed gifts such as fur, wings, and claws to living creatures, but when it came to human beings, he ran out of gifts. When we think of the nature in which the first people lived, all the creatures around them had equipment that was suitable for them and would give them an advantage, but human beings were powerless and helpless in the face of nature. So Prometheus decided to steal fire from the Olympus, which would give humans an important advantage, and bring it down and bestow it on mankind. He devised a plan and stole a lightning bolt from Zeus. He directed it straight to the earth, and that's when mankind discovered fire. The most common view of the discovery of fire is that it was probably created with the help of lightning. The Titan Prometheus is credited with bringing fire and the skill of metalworking to the human race. For this act he was punished by Zeus and helplessly chained to a rock and forced to endure an eagle eating his liver every day. According to many myths, we only become truly human when we acquire fire. It is therefore natural to assume a parallel awakening for where we live. The ancient world did not acquire some of the components of fire until many eons later. More importantly, these components needed a durable binding to mix together. The pieces had to come together and do so in a coherent way. Combustion has a creation story, fire has a history. Of the three basic elements of fire, only the heat of ignition evolved on early Earth. Earth's colonizing fires required land plants. These probably consisted of primeval steppes, a matrix of reeds close to the coast. Fires probably first flashed in the early Devonian period, about 420 million years ago. The oldest fossil charcoal dates from this era. Since then, the evolution of fire has been relentless, if erratic. Each of the components of combustion has existed more or less differently from the others, occasionally colliding with a whisper of oxidation or a bright burst of combustion. But combustion could only survive if it had a coherent and durable context. Over time, fire itself became a synthesizing process, a kind of biochemical wheel that helped balance its separate parts into a coherent whole. It has perhaps profoundly influenced the character of life. The biosphere gradually assimilated fire and adjusted to fit into a system of biological checks and balances. This was easiest for oxygen and fuel, both of which are products of life. The assimilation of fire was more tedious and had to await the arrival of creatures that could create sparks and heat as easily as they could pierce bone and chisel flint. These creatures, of course, were us. The transition from raw to cooked food was a dramatic turning point in human evolution, and this discovery reveals that prehistoric humans were able to deliberately make fire for cooking at least 780,000 years ago. Detailed study of fish teeth unearthed at the Gesher Benot Yaakov site on the edge of the ancient Lake Hula revealed that some of our earliest ancestors, most likely Homo erectus, were able to cook fish. The shift to eating cooked food meant that humans spent less energy on the intensive work of searching for and digesting fresh, raw food, and had more time to develop new social and behavioral systems. Cooking kills bacteria and increases the energy value of meat, thus creating a new and reliable food source for early hominids. This helps explain why our hominid ancestors evolved the way they did. Starting to consume cooked meat was one of the biggest leaps in human evolution brought about by fire. So, in a roundabout way, fire gave our species confidence, heat, protection, protein, and intelligence. Fire is the rapid combustion of combustible material through the evolution of heat, often accompanied by a flame. It was one of the basic tools of the human race, and its control helped it advance on the path to civilization. Mankind's interaction with fire is a complex one, with both positive and negative aspects. Humans have used fire for heating and cooking for a long time. The first source of fire was undoubtedly lightning, and such accidental flames remained the only source of fire for ages. For some years, Peking man was believed to be the undisputed earliest user of fire at around 500,000 BC, but evidence unearthed in Kenya in 1981 and in South Africa in 1988 suggests that the earliest controlled use of fire by hominids dates back to around 1,120,000 years ago. It was not until 7000 BC that Neolithic man acquired reliable fire-making techniques in the form of friction-producing tools, or flints struck with pyrites. Even then, it was more convenient to keep fire alive than to relight it. The first people to control fire gradually learned its many uses. Not only did they use fire to keep warm and cook their food, but they also learned to use it for hunting or warfare, to kill insects, and to clear forests of undergrowth so that game could be better seen and hunted. Eventually they learned that burning the undergrowth produced better pastures and therefore more game. With the development of Neolithic agriculture in the Middle East around 7000 BC, there was a new urgency to clear bushes and trees. Early farmers used fire to clear fields and produce ash to be used as fertilizer. This practice, called slash and burn agriculture, continues today in many tropical and some temperate regions. The step from the control of fire to its production is huge and required hundreds of thousands of years. It is hard to imagine the number and variety of inventions involved in such production. There is no evidence that man knew how to produce fire until the Neolithic period. It is not known whether an accidental spark from striking flint against pyrites or a spark from friction while drilling a hole in wood gave people the idea to produce fire, but flint and pyrites, as well as fire drills, have been recovered from Neolithic sites in Europe. Most common among prehistoric and later primitive peoples was the friction method of making fire. The simple fire drill, consisting of a hard wooden stick with a pointed end that is rotated between the palms and pressed into a hole in the edge of a softer wooden stick, is almost universal. The fire plough and fire saw are variations of the friction method common in Oceania, Australia, and Indonesia. Mechanical fire drills were developed by Eskimos, ancient Egyptians, Asian peoples, and a few Native Americans. A fire piston, which generates heat and fire by compressing air in a small bamboo tube, was a complex device invented and used in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Around 1800, a metal fire piston was independently invented in Europe. In 1827, the English chemist John Walker invented the friction match containing phosphorus sulfate, the same one used today. Sacred fires and fire practices in religious rituals and the numerous fire gods in world mythology are interpreted as additional evidence of both the antiquity and importance of fire in human history. In ancient Vedic scriptures, Agni, or fire, was the personification of the messenger and sacrificial fire between humans and their gods. Today, Brahmin households are required to keep a sacred fire to worship Agni, just as the ancient Romans kept a sacred perpetual fire tended by virgin priestesses, and the Greeks tended and carried the sacred fire of Hesiod during the migrations. The Zoroastrians of Iran placed fire at the center of their religion and worshipped it as the most subtle and spiritual principle and the most powerful and sacred force. It was thought to be offered to man directly from heaven and lit by God himself. The need to protect fire from contamination was also believed in parts of Africa, North and South America, and elsewhere. The Aztecs in Mexico and the Incas in Peru worshipped their fire gods with sacred flames, which the Incas ignited by concentrating the sun's rays with a concave metallic mirror. The great Greek scholars and philosophers considered fire as important as religious mystics. Aristotle, for example, declared fire to be one of the four general and fundamental elements of life and everything, along with water, earth, and air. Plato claimed that God used the four elements in the creation of the world. Heraclitus attributed to fire the power necessary for creation. Familiarity with fire, easily produced by flint and steel, phosphorus matches, or electricity, has led modern civilizations to take it for granted. But just as the initial control of fire was necessary for the development of humankind from the old Stone Age hunters in the tropical jungle to the first village-dwelling farmers of the Neolithic, so fire was necessary at every stage of civilization's growth over the next 10,000 years. From the earliest use of fire for cooking, cleaning the soil, and providing warmth and illumination in caves and huts, fire was applied to clay pots to make pottery, to pieces of ore to extract copper and tin, and to combine them to make bronze, c. 3000 BC, and iron, c. 1000 BC. Much of the history of modern technology and science can be characterized as a steady increase in the amount of energy available through fire and under human control. The history of fire is not short, nor is its future. Hominids' alliance with fire, perhaps deep enough to be a symbiosis, lasted only a few million years in the past, and may not last that long in the future. Yet this epoch, though not as deep as ice, fundamentally reshaped the Earth, along with fire. Hominins emerged from the freeze-thaw cycle of the Pleistocene. They evolved into many species. All of them had the ability to manipulate fire, changing both their genotype and their geography. Then, during the last glaciation, they were pruned until only one species, Sapiens, survived. As always, fire draws its power from its context. It catalyzes those around it. Even for Sapiens, fire alone was not enough, but neither were their other abilities. The firebrand became a fulcrum, using opposable thumbs, bipedal locomotion, big brains, language and the rest as leverage to reconfigure physical environments, which in turn changed the modifier. Changing the scene changed the actor. Without it, it is hard to imagine Sapiens flourishing, or even dominating. At each subsequent historical turning point, their firepower increased, and this increase often followed pathways to more power as new fuels were found, new tools and places to burn were devised, and new purposes were set. Now this firepower has become a planetary signature. It threatens to so disrupt and upset the human environment that the habitat it creates may become uninhabitable. This disturbance is so profound that it has even shaken the story we tell about fire and ourselves. Both the narrative and the narrator have become unreliable. But this has always been the case. Good fire created us, bad fire can destroy us. We tell the story of what happens when we gather around a flame. That moment when we saw the first dance of flames was a giant step for humanity from darkness to light. But fire is not only a warm element used to warm and enlighten, it is also the cradle of cultures, civilizations, and science. The presence of fire brought communities together. People sat around the fire and told stories, shared knowledge, created art, and expressed their feelings to each other. Fire was the beginning of coexistence, solidarity, and human bonds. This monumental discovery changed the way humans interacted with their environment. The control of fire accelerated the development of agriculture and set the stage for the Industrial Revolution. With the Industrial Revolution, fire became one of the main sources of energy and a driving force for technological progress. But there is one thing we should not forget. The miracle of fire also comes with great responsibility. We must use this power not only as a tool for progress, but also as a protector of nature. We owe it not only to ourselves, but also to future generations to use fire with wisdom. See you in my next video. Take care. Goodbye.